I often think about how it all began. As if there was one exact moment, a specific point in time when life was still clean, and the possibilities ahead seemed endless. I was 24 back then, and I honestly believed I was one of those lucky few destined to break free from the crowd and do everything right. I had a job that paid more money than I'd ever seen in my childhood. I had contacts that opened doors to restaurants, clubs, companies most people wouldn't even dream of entering. I felt like my life was a kind of game, and somehow, I had become the main character. But the truth is, that's exactly when I first allowed myself to relax in the wrong way. It started innocently enough, just a glass of wine after work to unwind. I told myself everyone did it, my boss, my colleagues, even the role models I looked up to. Then that glass turned into a beer at the bar with friends. A month later it was whiskey with ice, alone in my kitchen at midnight, working on ideas, with my laptop. The most dangerous part was that alcohol didn't look like an enemy. On the contrary, it felt like my companion, a friend that helped me loosen up, smile easier, and talk more confidently. And it was exactly from that habit that my slow but steady collapse began. I remember one night vividly. We were celebrating the closing of a huge deal with colleagues. Champagne everywhere, endless shots, cocktails flowing. I felt like I was on top of the world, money hitting my account, women laughing at my jokes, music so loud that I didn't even need to think. At some point I just grabbed my car keys. I'm not that drunk, I told myself. And that became the beginning of a new habit, alcohol and driving at high speed, side by side. One of my friends used to joke, when you're young and rich, death feels like a word from another language. But that was a lie. Death was sitting right next to me in the passenger seat, just waiting for me to push the pedal a little harder than I should. Alcohol is a sneaky enemy. It doesn't knock on your door with a warning, it just quietly moves into your life. You think you're in control. You laugh when friends hint that you drink too much. You justify yourself by saying it's just a normal way to relax. And then one morning you wake up with shaking hands, and without a shot of brandy, you can't even button your shirt. That was the moment the first stone rolled, triggering the avalanche. Alcohol opened the door to office affairs. I had always thought of myself as loyal, at least in principle. I had a girlfriend I'd been with since college. She believed in me so much that her faith felt like armor protecting me. But one late evening at the office, working on a presentation with a colleague, wine on the table, jokes flying, the closeness unbearable, our lips met. And in that moment, I felt the same thing I'd felt when I first drove drunk, it's nothing serious, no big deal. The next morning, I swore to myself it was one time only. But as with alcohol, once is never enough. I started living a double life. By day, I was the successful young professional, the suit, the smile, the right words. By night, I was someone else, drinking too much, calling the wrong woman, making stupid choices, and waking up with the sense that something invisible was eating away at me. And that's when the real decline began. I watched my older brother waste away from alcoholism. He had once been my hero, smart, funny, charming. But by then he was just a shell of a man, sitting in his room with a bottle, drained of all his vitality. I looked at him and thought, I'm not like him. But the irony was, I was walking the very same road, only faster. Office affairs, drunken night races through the city, alcohol marathons that ended with me not remembering how I got home, it all looked like stories from a movie. But reality was different, each day I was becoming less of myself. People like to talk about the fatal mistake that ruins a life. But in truth, it all begins with tiny steps. With a glass of wine. With an innocent kiss. With one reckless drive home. And each of these steps is another brick in the wall separating you from a normal life. At that time, I still didn't realize my path was already set. That ahead of me waited drugs, toxic people, money that evaporated faster than I could earn it. But the first chapter of my downfall had already been written, the night I told myself, I'll relax, just like everyone else. And from there, it only got worse. They say the biggest problems always start small. That's true. Alcohol was only the first step. But the darkest part was still ahead, and I didn't even realize how quickly it would break me. I never thought I would touch drugs. I had seen the wrecks, thin, hollow-eyed shadows wandering through the neighborhood, drained of life. I laughed at them, told my friends, that's not for me. I'll never go that low. But alcohol tears down barriers. It blurs the line between acceptable and never. And so, there I was in a club bathroom, some guy holding out a line on his phone screen. Try it, man. It's fun. Everyone does it. I didn't think twice. My entire life at that moment revolved around being like everyone else. So I inhaled. It felt like something clicked in my brain. Energy surged, confidence bloomed, the sense that I could conquer mountains. I felt invincible. That feeling, that's what makes drugs so treacherous. They give you exactly what you crave, strength, boldness, freedom. But the cost is always hidden. And the price you pay is far greater than what you receive. The first time felt like a dumb experiment. The second, why not, since it's here. The third, the night isn't the same without it. After that, you're hooked. You don't go to the club to dance anymore, you go chasing that feeling. That surge. That split second when your brain is flooded with euphoria, and you forget everything. But every high has a crash. And the crash always comes. I used to think hangovers were the worst thing in the world. But a drug hangover is different. It feels like the entire world hates you and wants you gone. It's when your own thoughts turn into enemies, whispering that you're worthless. And to shut those voices up, you reach again for the very thing that's destroying you. I started burning through money as if it were infinite. Bonuses, paychecks, side hustles, all disappeared into smoke and powder. I could blow more in one night at the club than my mother earned in a month. And I didn't even notice. I told myself, I'll make more. And I did. But the more I earned, the faster it vanished. With drugs came a new crowd. People who appeared when I was on the wave. They laughed, toasted, shared their stash. But they were never there when things turned dark. They vanished when I was alone at 3 a.m, staring blankly at the ceiling, hating myself. For them, I was just a wallet, a good time, a spark for the party. And when I fell, I became dead weight. I remember one colleague vividly. He worked at a big financial firm, pulling in nearly $300,000 a year. Smart, charismatic, a natural leader. But he got so deep into coke that even nightclubs weren't enough. He started bringing it to work. One day, high as a kite, he ran a video conference and decided it was fine to have sex in the office during the call, forgetting his mic was still on. They fired him the next morning, and every major firm quietly blacklisted him. A man with everything turned into a pariah. I looked at him and thought, I'm not that stupid. But the truth? I was walking the exact same road. Drugs gave me the illusion of power, but they stripped me of everything else. Sleep. Health. Ambition. What remained was one craving, more. Always more. And then came gambling. At first it was harmless bets with friends. Let's put 100 on the match, just for fun. A way to spice up the night. But just like alcohol and drugs, it morphed into something darker. I became addicted to the adrenaline of the gamble. The rush of putting money down, the thumping heart, the sweaty palms. Winning was a high that rivaled any drug. Losing triggered rage and obsession. I'll win it back. And so I bet again. I saw others fall harder. One friend lost his parents' house to sports betting. Another sold his car and laptop trying to recover losses. And I still played. I thought I was smarter. That I could quit whenever I wanted. But no one ever quits, whenever. I started living far beyond my means. Buying clothes I didn't need. Dining at restaurants just to be seen. Taking out loans to impress people who didn't care if I lived or died. I believed that if I looked successful, I was successful. In reality, I was building a house of cards ready to collapse at the first breeze. All of it dragged me down. But the worst part wasn't the money or the drugs. It was that I lost myself. My values dissolved in alcohol fumes, drug smoke, and betting slips. I was no longer the kid who wanted to change the world. I was just a shadow clinging to false highs. And still, every morning I'd look in the mirror, puffy face, red eyes, trembling hands, and say, I've got this. I can stop anytime. But that's the lie every addict tells themselves. You don't just stop. Not without a crash. Not without losing something you can't get back. And deep inside, I felt it coming. The moment when it would all fall apart. It was like driving a car with no brakes straight into a wall. You know the crash is near, but you press the gas anyway. And I kept pressing. If someone had stopped me back then and said, listen, your biggest problem isn't alcohol, it isn't drugs, and it isn't even gambling. Your biggest problem is women, I would have laughed in their face. I always thought I had control. But in reality, this was the area where I collapsed the fastest. I remember my first serious girlfriend. We met in college. She was the one who always believed in me. When I doubted myself, when I hesitated, when others dismissed me, she was there, full of faith. Her faith felt like a shield, like armor. I was certain she was the one. But I destroyed that myself. It began as a small, office fling. Late nights, too much wine, lingering glances. A kiss, just once, no big deal. That's what I told myself. But as with alcohol, once is never just once. The second time always follows. And if there's a second time, there will be a third. Soon, your conscience stops screaming. It grows tired. And you get used to living a double life. I started lying. Small lies at first, then bigger ones. Lies about where I was, who I was with, what I was doing. Lies became a second skin. And once you accept them, guilt disappears. What replaces it is thrill. The thrill of seeing how much you can hide, how long you can juggle two worlds. The affairs piled up. And the worst part? I began to mistake them for real love. Every time I met someone new, I convinced myself I'd fallen in love again. But the truth was, I wasn't in love with them, I was in love with the feeling of power. The power of being wanted. The illusion that I could have anyone. But every choice leaves scars. Some men just break hearts. Others destroy families. I managed to do both. I watched it happen to others too. One executive at my firm had the perfect life on paper, wife, kids, house, career. But he couldn't keep his pants zipped. One mistress, then a pregnancy. His wife found out and left. He married the mistress. That might have been a chance to start over, but he cheated again. She left too. Another pregnancy, another breakup. Today, he earns more than $500,000 a year but spends nearly half on alimony. He lives in a rental apartment, broke and bitter. I looked at him and thought, I'm smarter. That won't happen to me. But I was already taking the same steps. Already setting myself on fire, believing I wouldn't burn. There was one woman who taught me the harshest lesson. She came into my life at my peak. She knew what I earned, what I could provide. She didn't love me, she loved what I represented. But I couldn't see it. I believed her sweetness, her well-timed support. I thought it was love. When she said she was pregnant, the ground vanished beneath me. For the first time, I truly felt fear. I wasn't ready to be a father. I wasn't even ready to take responsibility for my own life. But I told myself, this is it. This is the sign. Time to grow up. I prepared. Bought things. Planned the future. Told friends proudly I'd be a dad. But the fear never left. And then, just before the due date, I called her mother. Wanted to check how she was doing. Her mother said, I don't know what lies she told you, but this child is not yours. Turns out she'd been with someone else the whole time. The baby was his. I was just a wallet, a safety net. That revelation shattered me. It showed me just how dangerous the wrong woman could be. She doesn't just break your heart. She can ruin your finances, your sanity, your sense of self. But even after that, I didn't stop. Because by then, women had become another addiction. I was chasing emotions, chasing the rush of being desired, chasing distractions from my own emptiness. Each time I told myself, this one is different. But they never were. Women became another drug. You get the high when she's near. The crash when she's gone. So you look for another fix. And the cycle spins endlessly. In the end, I realized, the real destruction doesn't come from booze or gambling. It comes from opening your life to the wrong person. Because once she's inside, she doesn't just take your money or your time. She takes you. Piece by piece. I destroyed the relationship with the one woman who truly loved me. I pushed away the friends who tried to stop me. I betrayed my own principles. And all for fleeting pleasure. For the illusion of power. I wasn't special. I wasn't different. I was just another fool who thought the rules didn't apply to him. And that's when I learned, a woman can lift you higher than any career or paycheck. But the wrong one can bury you faster than any drug or debt. And that was the next stage of my fall. There's something harder to explain than booze, harder than drugs, worse than women or gambling. Ego. That quiet whisper that says, you're smarter than everyone else. Stronger. Above the rules. Ego is when you look in the mirror and see not a man, but a god in your own eyes. And ego was the blade that cut me deepest. I started believing I was untouchable. With money, connections, women, and crowds of friends always around, life began to feel like my personal playground. And so, I didn't just play with fire, I poured gasoline on it and laughed, convinced the flames couldn't reach me. I'll never forget one meeting. It was routine, nothing special. My boss suggested slowing down the pace of a project. And I snapped. Who the hell was he to tell me how to work? I brought in more money than half the department combined. So I raised my voice. Told him to his face he didn't know shit. That was the end. Years of trust, gone in seconds. My ego whispered, you're a hero. You spoke truth. But in reality, I torched my career. In business, nothing is deadlier than undermining authority in public. After that, I saw doors quietly closing. Colleagues avoided me. Management lost faith. The friends, who once called me every night, stopped picking up. But I refused to admit fault. Instead, I blamed everyone else. They're jealous. They don't understand me. They fear me. My ego fed me poison, and I swallowed it gladly. And then came the wrong crowd. There's a saying, you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. My 5? Coke-snorting, hard-drinking gamblers who lived for chaos. They laughed at my stories of losing respect at work. Forget the job, man. Real life is here, with us. And I believed them. They stroked my ego, fueled my rage, cheered my self-destruction. They called me special, clapped when I blew my paycheck, raised glasses when I smashed another bottle. But when I fell, they vanished. Every time. Anger became my language. I couldn't handle conflict calmly anymore. Every word felt like an insult. Every glance felt like a challenge. I picked fights in bars, on streets, even at the office. I told myself I was a lion defending his pride. In truth, I was a scared kid hiding behind aggression. One night sealed it. I was drunk in a bar when some guy brushed past me by accident. He apologized. A normal man would nod and move on. But my ego roared, "You'll let him disrespect you?" I grabbed his shirt, shoved him, threatened him. He backed away terrified. I sat down feeling victorious, like I'd proved my strength. But the next morning, hungover and hollow, I realized, that man could have been anyone, a student, a father, a stranger. And I had nearly wrecked his life over nothing. My ego and rage made me dangerous, not just to myself but to everyone around me. I became someone people avoided. And the lonelier I grew, the more I convinced myself the world was plotting against me. That's the deadliest place to be, when you believe everyone is your enemy. That's when men do the stupidest things, join crime, drown in loans, drive at insane speeds, or chase oblivion in powder and booze. I tried them all. I lost the money. Lost the career. Lost the love. And most of all, lost myself. Because when ego runs your life, when rage and toxic crowds steer your path, you're no longer a man. You're just a shadow pretending to be a king. Looking back, I finally understand, the deadliest enemy isn't the bottle or the casino. It's your own head convincing you you're immortal, invincible. And I believed that lie. And it destroyed me. I used to think destruction looked like an explosion. Loud, sudden, dramatic, like a car crash at high speed, one fatal mistake that wipes everything out. But the truth? Real destruction is quiet. It's like rust. From the outside, you still look whole, shining, strong. But inside, you're rotting. Until one day, the whole structure collapses at a touch. That's how my life fell apart. Alcohol turned me into a man who couldn't wake up without a drink. Drugs broke my will and sold me illusions of strength that I repaid with years of humiliation. Women, the wrong women, drained my wallet, my hope, my faith in love. Gambling buried my financial stability. Ego and anger burned the bridges with everyone who could have saved me. And in the end, I was alone. Alone in an apartment where the curtains stayed shut. Alone with a phone that only rang with debt collectors or leeches asking for favors. Alone with an empty wallet and bank messages that made my chest tighten. Alone with a mirror reflecting a stranger with gray eyes and trembling hands. You know things are bad when you're counting coins for the cheapest bottle. When your greatest achievement for the day is getting out of bed. When all you can think about is the next fix. But the worst part isn't poverty or sickness. The worst part is realizing you destroyed everything yourself. No one forced me to drive drunk. No one shoved powder up my nose. No one dragged me into affairs or casinos. No one made me scream at bosses or swing fists at strangers. That was me. Only me. That's the heaviest weight to carry, knowing you ruined your own life. I lost jobs. One after another. The resume still looked impressive, but no one wanted to touch me with my reputation. I sold my car to pay debts. Then my furniture. Then I took side gigs I once thought were beneath me, handing out flyers, carrying boxes in a mall. A man who once out-earned his whole family reduced to minimum wage shifts just to survive. I thought I had hit rock bottom. But life showed me there's always deeper. My health began to fail. My heart hammered like it was trying to break free. My kidneys ached. My stomach rejected food unless I washed it down with alcohol. Doctors looked at me not as a young professional with potential but as another statistic, another cautionary tale. And then came what I call the moment of truth. One morning, I woke and couldn't get out of bed. My body refused. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking, this is it. This is how I die. Alone. In this dark room. Forgotten. But I didn't die. Hours later, I forced myself up. And in that moment, something inside shifted. I realized, if I was capable of destroying my life so thoroughly, maybe I was capable of building it back. At least trying. Because if not, why was I still alive? Climbing back was harder than falling. Falling is easy, you just chase whatever feels good in the moment. Climbing takes years, strength, patience. I started small. I stopped lying. First to myself, then to others. Then I quit drinking. Those first months were hell. Every cell screamed for a sip. But I resisted. I cut away the people who dragged me down. It hurt, because it left me completely alone. But sometimes solitude is better than a crowd that's killing you. Then I relearned work. Small jobs at first. Then bigger ones. Slowly, step by step, I built something resembling a life again. Did I become the same successful guy I once was? No. Do I regret? Every day. But one thing I didn't lose completely was experience. And now, that's my strength. Because I know success isn't money, status, women, or cars. Success is being able to look in the mirror without shame. So if you ask me today how a young, successful man can ruin his life,